you mentioned high intensity interval training. The benefits of that, short term and long term, because I've heard a lot of great things. And they have this whole HIIT series you'll find online in places, and they have these, whether it's a 6 or 12-minute workout that involves going hard for 90 seconds, take a 30-second break, or something along those lines. What do you know about the, again, pros and cons of HIIT training?
Yeah. So I'd say HIIT started becoming popular back in '96 with Tabata. Izumi Tabata was the Japanese scientist that was training, I believe, the speed skating team, and they were wildly successful with that. So the Tabata intervals that he used was 20 seconds at 175% VO2 max. I mean, really high intensity effort, followed by 10 seconds of rest, and then you repeated that. So it was a 4-minute bout of work. And a study that was published in '96 compared the effects of that to something very traditional, is like 70% VO2 max effort, kind of a moderate intensity type of exercise bout for an extended period of time, 30 minutes or 20 minutes, something like that. And they found that the endurance improvements, aerobic capacity, were very similar between those two. One was 4 minutes long, one was 20 minutes long, but the endurance improvements were very similar, and anaerobic power, so kind of like your sprinting ability, was also improved with the Tabata. So that kind of started this craze. And at this point, people take Tabata and they apply that classical 20-to-10 work-rest ratio to a lot of different modes of exercise. Maybe it's cycling, swimming, running, CrossFit stuff, kettlebell, whatever. So I have followed the interval stuff pretty closely in the last number of years, because we do some of that research here. In fact, I'm doing a study this academic year that's comparing different modes with high-intensity cycling to something more traditional with running, to see what would the carryover be to run performance. What we do know is that high-intensity interval training in any mode can be really effective at improving your fitness, both VO2 max and lactate threshold. We do know that. We know that it can improve those things very, very quickly. And more recent research has started to take the HIIT types of protocols, slightly modified, and using them with diseased populations, cardiac rehab populations, anyone that we'd consider a special population that in the past people were like, well, we need to be really careful. I mean, it wasn't actually that long ago when physicians did not recommend people do exercise following some sort of cardiac surgery, because they thought the stress on the heart would not be helpful. But then we soon realized, and evidence is research is always a little bit behind the ball on this, that actually is the most beneficial thing you could be doing. So HIIT is kind of the next evolution even for those populations. And the neat thing about that is those populations tend to be long-term sedentary populations where maybe they've never been active for 40, 50 years. They've got a lot of different things going on, both metabolically, cardiovascularly, whatever. And HIIT training is also effective for them, perhaps maybe as effective or more effective than traditional lower intensity training. So in a lot of different populations, the literature is starting to back the fact that HIIT is effective, and you can see improvements within 2 weeks. What we don't necessarily know right now is it more effective? Is it less effective? And how long can you do a HIIT program before perhaps you've adapted to it and you're not going to realize further benefits? For instance, we've read a lot about this summer. We didn't see really any differences in programs that had that were 2 weeks long versus, say, 4, 6, 8 weeks long. It seemed like in many of them they would get this benefit really quick, and then they kind of stabilize. And so I guess a practical note on that is it was something that's really high intensity. I mean, something more akin to Tabata stuff, short, uber intense or intervals. You're probably going to get a really fast and big benefit from that, but you may not continue to get these benefits. I mean, there's going to be some top point for everyone. Sure. Now, with that being said, high intensity intervals might be subject to definition. Tabata and the really uber intense short work stuff is what kind of framed HIIT, but now it's shifted more towards longer intense intervals with endurance athletes. And so I think kind of the practical recommendation that's out there right now is there's a time and a place in training for different types of work rest intervals. Perhaps when someone's trying to improve VO2 max, they want to do higher intensity on the intervals with larger rest breaks. Whereas if they're trying to improve lactate threshold, they want intense but lower intensity intervals for a much longer duration, because you want the muscles to experience what it is like to be at threshold when there's these protons and stuff hanging out causing damage for an extended period of time, and then taking very short breaks in between those intervals so that you can get just enough lactate and protons out of the muscle to do another one, but not much more than that. So I don't know. I've heard people. There's really not like a hard line, between a hard interval versus something someone might call HIIT. How long does the interval have to be, and how intense before someone says, that's not HIIT or that is HIIT? There's no clear boundaries there. But interval training, period, long, short, whatever, is here to stay. I mean, it's popular, it's effective. We just don't know in the long term if someone just did that and no base work, is that effective? There's no evidence to support that either way yet.
I don't know if it's common knowledge with my circle of athlete friends, but if you did a 12 or 15 minute HIIT workout, that can have greater benefits than doing an hour and 15 of straight cardio at a 70% effort. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, from a variety of perspectives, a shorter, intense workout like you described could elicit some of the same aerobic and anaerobic benefits as a longer one. But the thought is still that there are probably some unique adaptations from each that may not be well teased out or documented yet. I'd say traditionally, for instance, the base building work that athletes will do in the off season, lots of miles, low intensity. Traditionally, it has been shown that will help increase mitochondrial density within the cells, the muscle cells. So more mitochondria means higher VO2 max. Typically, you'll see an increase in capillary density, so the blood supply to the muscle increases, and that's like trying to widen I-90. Right now, it's 3-4 lanes, and you say, okay, we know we're going to get more traffic later in the year, so let's make this 8 lanes wide. We're not going to need it yet, but we will later. Adding more blood vessels just gives us more of an infrastructure for harder work down the road. So we know those kinds of adaptations take time to develop, and low intensity, sustained work does a good job of developing those. So the thought traditionally has been that's why you do the base, develop this infrastructure, and then the intervals allow you to use that infrastructure. Well, some of this new stuff, particularly the high-intensity interval cycling with disease populations, they've looked at things like mitochondrial growth, blood capillary density, and they're seeing some of the same benefits from that type of training that have traditionally been just associated with the sustained low-intensity work. So again, maybe the high-intensity stuff is exactly the same benefit as the low-intensity stuff, just it's quicker. Maybe there's something more unique to that the low-intensity can't provide, and vice versa. That is still being teased out a little bit.
So HIIT is here to stay?
Without a doubt. It's got a place. It's just a matter of how much